Yeah, now I can see it. All right, cool.
Sorry. This is my
So,
first time doing it, so
yeah, no worries. Let's pause really quick. I just want to. Okay, so let's set this up. You see the little. Can we see the scoreboard? Adding the scoreboard. If you go to the bottom left, there's a little
um,
eye. Yeah, so click on that, and then hit scoreboard. Okay, now close that. And then no, I mean, sorry. Keep it up, yeah, and then close the yeah. And then next to on your character, there next to your movement speed, there's a little triangle button on the left again. Yeah, click that, open it. Perfect. Okay, sweet. So the first, I guess, step is like games start from minute one, right? Like there's things happening already,
mhm.
right? So I just want to understand like what are you thinking about when you're getting into a game? Like what are some thoughts or like what are some, what are you planning for when you start a game?
um, like like right away when I first start,
Hmm.
first of all, I just asked my team like, "Hey, are we invading? Like what are we doing?" I don't think we'd invade in this case, but
Yeah.
after that, I just go ahead and just try and go around like that left bush at the left part of the screen,
Hmm.
try and just like get vision. And normally, like around 120, like 122, I just ward the enemy red for my jungler.
Cool.
Um, that's pretty much what I. That's like my normal routine.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, when it's
I like that. I like that you're thinking about getting vision on the jungler's red. Um, so oftentimes, like, I guess other things to think about is like, instead of just asking your team, do you want to invade? It's like thinking about, does your team want to invade, right? Like, your level one in this instance is, what do you think? Is it pretty good? Is it pretty bad? Like, would it be beneficial for you guys to invade here? What do you think?
I think yeah, I mean like a Maokai, like
Yeah.
root or whatever would be
Mm-hmm.
better than their level one invade. I think we would have us like a little bit of an advantage going in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it would
Yeah, so
really
I
be
think that's
that.
totally fair. So that I guess what I was trying to get at was like, if you think your team has a good level one, it's good to like encourage them to do something about it. And in this instance, I think you guys have a way better level one than the other team, right? Jin has four autos. They have a really squishy Sona, and you have a Lucian and Kindred, which outranges anything that they could possibly do. So like pinging your team, hey, let's go to red aggressively could be a
Mhm.
very legitimate play here for you guys. And not everything I talk about will be about your matchup. We can get into that in a moment, but that's
Sure.
one way that you can create advantages for your team right off the bat, right? Um, I also like the ward. Did you place it in this game yet, or is it still not time?
I don't think I placed it yet.
Okay, cool. Where do you place that ward? Let's see. If you press play,
Okay.
yeah, let's see where you place it. Because this ward is very powerful, right? It tells your jungler a lot of information.
Actually, no wait. I don't think I awarded this game.
You didn't ward in this game? Okay, totally.
Sorry, I'm on red side.
No, you're good. So what I would recommend is as Orianna, you have a couple options, right? You can send your Q out to scout, and you can place that ward. So actually, what I would recommend, since there is a Wukong could do a level three gank, right? So
Mm.
a good place to ward is right where he is now, right around there. So you
Oh yeah,
get
yeah.
that jungle like exit into the river, and you can see if he's pathing in that direction, bot to top, because you know he's going bot to top at this point, right?
Yeah.
So that's a good place to ward right as the game starts, and you can use your Orianna Q to scout safely. Cool. So that's the first thing. One thing I did want to talk about is your rune setup, right? So if you want to pause, maybe we can talk about that really quickly. Um, you want to talk me through your rune choices and maybe why you went what you chose?
Yeah, sure. Normally, uh, I always just go summon in Airy just because like shield or like my I for my combo like I usually get a shield off, or like I can proc it on the enemy while I'm laning, like throw Qs at her, stuff like that. And then just I think it's just like a utility thing for my team when I shield
Hmm.
my like Lucian or Kindred or whoever. Um,
Yeah.
versus like the other, I forget what the other ones. Phase Rush. I'm not
Hmm.
really a big, or what's the other one? Arcane Comet.
Hmm.
I'm I just prefer the utility. Like it, summoning our areas like a little bit more my style, I guess.
Yeah.
And
Keep
for,
going. Yeah, I want to hear the rest of them too. Yeah.
I think Orianna struggles a little bit with mana, so
Hmm.
I just go for that free mana rune. Transcendence for lower cooldown
Yeah.
for my abilities. Um, I prefer them over the other ones, and then uh, it's a toss up between Scorch and
Hmm.
Gathering Storm. Uh, just really depends on like if I think the game's gonna go a little bit longer than
Hmm.
normal.
Yeah.
I just go Scorch,
Yeah, that
and
makes
then
sense.
for the secondary runes, uh, normally I'd go with uh the cosmic and the free boots
Hmm.
ones, but I just try to go for I switched it up to Triumph and
Hmm.
Coup de Grace, just because I like if I'm gonna be getting kills, like I appreciate like potentially living a little bit longer or get that potential, little bit of health for like ignite ticks kind of thing.
Hmm.
And then Coup de Grace if I'm like playing really aggressive and I'm trying to go for the kill kind of thing.
Gotcha. Do you think that in a Vex matchup, you're going to be harassing him and going for the kill? I'm just curious.
Um, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Like after Vex uses her combo, I can go for some poke.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
it's kind of like a toss up for this matchup for me.
Yeah. So I would actually say there's a couple things that I want to encourage you play with, and you mentioned some of them. So Airy definitely optimal if you're going to be doing some heavy trading. Airy is great on Oriana. You don't want to go Comet usually because you can't land it reliably. Phase Rush is also a very valid option into matchups like where they have heavy dive and or assassins because you can proc it so easily. So like the Phase Rush is still a good and viable route. It's just more like uh, do you think that you have lane priority all the time, and is this something that you can abuse for a long enough portion of the lane, right? Because once assassins get their kit, you're kind of on the defensive end, and that's where your phase rush really starts to pay dividends. Um, Transcendence great, Mana Fluke great, Scorch versus Gathering Storm I totally great. I think those both make sense. Your secondary, I'm a little I don't know if Triumph and Q is very good. Q personally doesn't synergize well with what Orianna tries to do because your focus in the early game and even towards the late game is to have those really high impact ultimates, right?
Mhm.
Less you can't get kills reliably on Orianna, right? You don't have like a Z execute. You don't have like a dash. You don't have a way to secure kills for yourself. You need like that front line, and you're mostly working on getting space for your team. So like building space for your team to actually fight. So I think the other thing to consider here is that Oriana kind of likes a slower paced game. She's generally a scaling champion. She's kind of like her identity is more of a very strong control mage, right? You benefit
Mhm.
from having a lot of lane control. You benefit from scaling into that mid game, late game, like late game especially. You're a monster, right? So Oriana has like this power trough. Her mid game is actually a little weak compared to other mages, especially when you're against like a burst mage like Vex, who's very strong in the mid game, and Wukong, who's very strong in the mid game. So one thing to consider in this game specifically is that yeah, you can kind of bully him early, but come mid game, Orianna Kindred versus Vex Wukong, that's kind of a losing matchup for you guys. So to think about like, will the coup and triumph really matter in the mid game? I would say a little bit less. But anyways, thinking about it from early game to mid game to late game and trying to optimize
Mm.
like the runes for that is something that I definitely would play around with. Tier I think is totally valid in this matchup. Um, you outrange Vex like crazy. So yeah, you should be procking that mana flow and that tier every time it's up. So definitely abusable, and I like those choices here. Um, if you don't mind, could we rewind to the start of laning, and that way I can observe kind of the early laning phase as well, and some of your choices there. Did that make
Okay.
sense? By the way, like, was
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
helpful? Yeah,
Yeah, I actually have never thought of it in that sense.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
like
And
when
the
you
reason
say
I
like
say that is because you have so much Orianna mastery, you can start to tweak these things around and see how it optimizes your damage in certain scenarios, right? Because you know her
yeah,
damage by now. You know that like when you get Ludens, you're pretty damn strong. But after
yeah,
that Ludens, you feel kind of you feel meh. You gotta kind of
yeah,
play fights differently, less for the kills, more for like that enabling style. So yeah.
yeah,
Sorry, I was talking, so I didn't get to watch your early laning one more time. If we don't
yeah.
mind rewinding, let's go back to the beginning. Is this the beginning? Yeah, there we go. Okay, perfect, cool. So, what are you kind of thinking about in these early levels? Like, what's your goal through this laning phase?
Just I guess trying. Well, mostly I've been trying to like focus on CSing really. Kind of struggle to look at the map, but if I can just try and see where my jungler is going, um, like see if I can help him like within like the first 3 minutes, like see if I can help him get the scuttles. And just focusing on farming really.
Yeah,
Um,
that makes
really
sense.
what I focus on.
The main reason I ask is because I noticed that you're pushing in this game, and I wanted to know if that was intentional.
Um, yeah, like see like that kind of thing. I don't know. I
Mm-hmm.
just usually just like auto
Got
the
it.
minions, and I
Okay.
don't know if I should like freeze it or like should I
Okay.
be matching like her autos?
Yeah,
Like,
cool. So let's pause for a moment and think about that really quick because the scenario that you're in right now is a very risky scenario. And do you kind of know why?
yeah, because well my wave is like pushed up right like by her tower, and like
Hmm.
I'm gonna be stuck there for like a wave or two. While I
Yeah.
try to bounce
So
back.
so not only are you going to be stuck there, your Kindred is going to be way too far to help you because Kindred is not even indicating that she wants to make an aggressive play. She's indicating that she wants to go farm her top side. And Wukong, incredibly strong, level 2 to 3, for example. And since you know that he started
Mm,
red, you're kind of in this tough spot. Like, if Wukong ganked you right now, you'd be in a really, really, really tough spot. You'd probably have to give up the wave. If you don't die, then it's frozen for Vex. Vex could freeze this wave right now, and you would have to spend a lot of resources to break that freeze and or call your jungler. So, considering the fact that you still have like a whole minute before that scuttle spawns, I would prep
mm,
the wave for that. So, if we rewind maybe another like 30, 40 seconds back to that pushing moment, the thing that I would encourage you to think about is like, okay, understanding how the first three waves behave is probably super important here, right? So do you know like when you hit level 2 or like when you hit level 3 and or what happens or when you expect cannon waves and all that kind of stuff?
yeah, I'll pause it for a sec. So, if I'm not mistaken, it's level 2 7 minions,
Mhm.
and then I'm not I'm not exactly sure what the level 3 is. I think it's like
Sure.
this after the third wave. Um, and cannon waves are every 2 waves, like 2 waves and then cannon, 2 waves and then cannon.
Yeah, so you're on track. So level 2 is 7 minions, meaning the first wave and the first melee minion from the second wave. Level 3 is 2 waves and 2 melee minions from the third wave, so it's 14 minions total. And the reason that that's super important is because level 3 is when you get access to your full kit, right? So
Mhm.
you want to understand, when am I ready to trade and when am I ready to trade aggressively, right? So Orianna is really good once she's got access to that full kit, right? So like, it kind of makes you think, oh, should I push level 1? Should I push for level 2? How hard should I push, right? Because once you hit level 2, that third wave, if you leave it alone, is going to bounce back in your direction. So what that means is, like, if you hard shove those first 2 waves, that's actually really good for Orianna because, one, her early levels are actually really strong, right? Her ball
Mhm.
outranges Vex, her autos chunk, and you can get a nice little cheeky QW in there, for example. Once you've hard shoved those first 2 waves into the tower, I would actually leave that third wave alone entirely and let it bounce back. Because if you don't auto that wave, the tower will focus on the cannon and it will bounce the wave back. So you'll end up in a
Okay.
very favorable position where now the wave is on your side and you can start to think about, okay, should I shove this back and get priority for my jungler? Like, that option opens up. It becomes a little bit easier to choose that option. Um,
Okay.
and that's something, like, I would encourage playing around with. Like, did that make
Mhm.
sense, by the way? Like,
Yeah.
was that okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So right
I
now
just had
you
a
want
quick
to
question
avoid
though.
these kinds of situations. Sorry, go ahead.
You said, sorry. So to reach level 3, it's
Hmm.
2 waves after the second, and then 2 melees.
It's
Did
14
I get that
minions
correct?
total, right? So if you think about
14
the
minutes. Okay.
first wave, it's 6 minions, and then you got
Yeah.
7. And then another 7 after that, you've got your level 3, right when that 14th minion dies.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you
Oh
know
yeah. Yeah. That
when.
makes
Mhm.
sense. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
what were you saying?
No. No. Go. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Cool. And so, as you're kind of doing those first 3 waves of manipulation, you also want to think about what you said earlier. Is this a 2v2 that we want to take? Right? So, like, for example, you were talking about helping your jungler do scuttle, right? Kindred probably definitely wants to do scuttle. She has an RNG on her mark, and if that mark is top scuttle, she's going for it. She's probably inting for it, actually, because we love Kindred
Yeah.
players. So, considering that when you have that third wave bounce, you want to decide, okay, should I shove this out? Should I leave this here? And then you can try to think about that early level roam. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so let's keep playing this out, and then I have a couple other points that I can talk about. Yeah, this wave is completely stuck. It's pretty rough. All right, so let's pause again. So one thing I don't see you doing too much of, and one of the strongest parts and strengths of Oriana's early game is her autos and her ability to zone using the ball. Do you know what I mean by when I say that?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
The zoning
So
part.
go ahead.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I get what you mean with the zoning with her ball and
Yeah.
just
So
autos, I guess.
are you familiar with Vex as a champion?
I know like her like basic kid. I'm not like too well versed in Vex. Like I just know she's a pretty recent champion, like two
Gotcha.
years maybe. But
Yeah, gotcha. So the other thing about mid lane is you start to know what to do with the waves once you know the matchup specifically. Right?
mm,
So Vex in this instance is a burst mage champion, right? So Vex will love to take like these really short trades as you saw in the matchup and experience probably, where she throws
Mhm.
out her E as a zoning tool, and then pops a Q, and then pops an auto, and then walks back, right? Orianna
Yeah.
can prevent a lot of that because literally one thing I would suggest is actually standing to the side of your minions. What that means is like, so in mid lane, right? For example,
Mhm.
there's a couple different ways to use your skill shots. The most efficient way to use a skill shot is by hitting both the opponent and the wave. So what good players will do is they'll make the opponent choose, right? So for example, if you stood to the left or to the right of your wave, you can then use your ball as a zoning tool for Vex because Vex is a much shorter ranged mage than you are, right?
Mhm.
And so even if Vex hits you with her abilities, it doesn't matter because now the wave is in your favor and she's spending mana for your HP. And so understanding that like the mana for HP trade in this case is not really going to accomplish anything for Vex. He can't kill you. She can't kill you yet. And you have all the push control because your autos and your ball are zoning her off the wave. So
Mhm.
I don't know if that made sense, but one thing I encourage trying in general is standing to the left or right of your minions. And you can do this in
They're saying
two
like
ways.
right here
Yeah,
or
like
like
more
right here.
there. And you know what you could do? You could shove that ball in that person's face, right? Like
So like if I'm
I dare you to walk up to this wave and hit it for free. I dare you to try to trade me, right?
yeah.
So
So wait,
so
you're saying
mhm.
for clarification, you're saying like I stand like here or
Mhm.
here, but like once I'm here or here, send out my ball
Mhm.
and try and zone them out.
Yeah, not just zone them
Okay.
out, but like literally force them to make a decision, right? You make their life
Mhm.
more complicated, right? They can either walk into your ball, take a bunch of damage. They can try to trade you, in which case you pop your E, you do damage to them, and then you Q back, right? You're going to win that scenario
Okay.
no matter what, right? That's the winning
Okay.
scenario that you want to set yourself up for. The other thing that is, and this might come later, but you want to stand to the side of which your jungler can assist you from, right? So,
Mhm.
for instance, in this game, it might not have worked because of where the lane is, right? So, like maybe not in this game, because one, your kindred actually isn't going for the mark or isn't even prepping for it yet, and I think the mark is spawning on that top scuttle. If I'm not reading, I can't actually see the map. Anyways, so generally speaking, you can do those things if you know where the other jungler is, right? So
Mhm.
so tracking becomes crucially important in that. And you can try to play more aggressively based on that. Do you know when Oriana or when mid laners hit level 6?
I want to say it's usually around like the 6 minute mark, like
Yeah.
5:30 6 minute mark.
So it's around 9 ways of experience, right? So your next kind of power, what do you want to call it? Power spike, right? Let's call it a power
Yeah.
spike. Comes when you hit level 6, because then you get this incredible zoning tool. So for now, from now till about 6 minutes, your goal is to kind of keep the game at a medium pace. You want to make sure that you're maintaining the waves. You want to make sure that you're reading what your kindred wants to do, and you probably don't want to skirmish.
Yeah. Okay.
So if that's the case, because Vex and Wukong are stronger than you at skirmishing, you
Mhm.
want to indicate that with your body language. So when you talk about wave maintenance, one of the easiest ways to understand what's happening to a wave is by counting the minions, right? Like if you count the minions, she has more minions, it's pushing into you, for example, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that is actually really helpful to understand wave states is knowing that each wave spawns at the 30-second mark. So 3
Yep.
minutes, a
Yep.
wave spawns. 3:30, a wave spawns. 4, 4:30, like that. And it takes about 25 seconds for that wave to come mid. So
You
knowing
said how many seconds?
about 25 seconds to get to mid lane.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so knowing that, around the 15 to 20-second mark, that lane is almost going to be in your space. You can kind of plan ahead once you get to that level of cognition, right? One,
Yeah.
you can think about, okay, is the next wave a cannon wave? Then I should probably think about backing here, right? Like, what are the items I need? Should I back on this wave? And like, what when like you can plan that out ahead of time.
Mm.
Um, so if we go back, let's rewind maybe like 20-30 seconds again, yeah, and then press play. So like right here, right? If you're standing to the side of that wave and shoving that ball in Vex's face, you're
Yeah.
contesting every single CS that this person wants to pick up. You know what I mean? Cool. I noticed that you haven't placed your ward this game. Ah, got it. Okay. Do you want to know why that ward is not very helpful?
Why? Is it because I should know that he went from red to blue.
So yeah, first of all, you know that he went bot to top. The second thing is, if you hover that word and toggle Fog of War, what does it really show you, right? Sorry, yeah, you're
So
on. So if you scroll up, right, let's move your camera up a little bit. What does it really show you, right? Like, let's say Wukong is coming for a gank. He's got a lot of
yeah.
options right now, I'd say, right? He can come from over the wall over here. He can come from over the wall over here on your side. He
Yeah.
doesn't even have to
Oh,
spend
here.
W, for example. He could just walk up behind you, for instance.
Yeah.
And so that leaves a lot of openings for you because your wave is in such a weird state. So one thing I would recommend, generally when you're placing a yellow ward, is if you go up a little bit more, the pixel brush in the river. You see that brush in the middle? Yeah. So warding that brush around this time, or maybe even earlier if you can, will
Mhm.
tell you if the other jungler is planning to do scuttle and or ganky from the top side. If you know that they're pathing from red to blue, right?
Okay.
So that gives
Um.
you that information. If they're pathing
Okay.
blue to red, you can do the exact same thing for the bot side brush.
Okay.
Yeah.
In this scenario though, like at the 3 minute mark, should I be doing this like when the waves are like at an even state, or like with this in this case, like
Mm-hmm.
because I know I'm pushed in, this would be the best time to do it?
So this is more about timing, right? So right now, this one is more about timing. If you are pushed in, great to get it earlier, right? The earlier you can get that
Okay.
ward, the better, for instance. The other
Okay.
great time that it's a good time to ward is, again, knowing what your kindred wants to do, right? So there's
Mhm.
multiple timers to kind of get that ward in. The reason I'm suggesting to do it around now is so that you know if there's going to be that scuttle fight, right? So like in the beginning of the game, we assumed there was going to be a scuttle fight because Kindred wants to go for that mark, right? So
Sure.
having
Yeah.
that ward in mind between the 3 minute mark and the 3:15, 3:20 mark is always a good window because you know that there might be a scuttle fight up there. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
I'm
Um,
gonna
yeah, you can press
keep
continue.
going.
Press
Okay.
play. Yeah. Do you have any questions? Like, is this helpful? Is this making sense for you right now?
Yes. One.
Yeah.
I got a not really a question, just
Sure.
like a really quick recap. So,
Sure.
um, this thing sorry, I gotta think of my words first.
Ah, take
The
your
main
time.
takeaways.
Yeah.
The main takeaway I got from just now
Mm-hmm.
was the levels. It takes 14 minions for level 3,
Mm-hmm.
and then you said level 6. What was level 6? You said it's like 9
Nine
waves.
waves of minions. Yeah. So on that ninth wave, where it's a cannon, usually it'll be a cannon wave. You should be hitting level 6, unless you got kills in that amount of time.
Okay, and then you said um in like it's not most cases, but you said I could either push the first 2 waves and then
Mm-hmm.
just let sit back and don't touch the third
Mm-hmm.
to have it bounce back to me. And then in that case, like I can decide whether to hey push or like hey like see if I can help my jungler or something.
Yeah. So on
Is that
that,
right?
yeah, you want to figure out whether so letting that third wave bounce back is a choice. I'm not saying to do it all the time. I guess what I was
Okay.
trying to say is like if you let that wave bounce back and you think you're gonna get ganked, then it's a good choice to play passively so the wave bounces back because it
Okay.
mitigates the effect of that gank. If you're not going to get ganked and you kind of know what the other jungler wants to do and what your jungler wants to do, then
Yeah.
push, then get the ward in, get ready to skirmish. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. 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 That's just really the main clarification I had
Yeah,
for
for
right now.
sure.
Yeah.
Um, and understanding lane state, one good thing to practice is whenever you feel like, okay, so there's a couple of moments that build up and you're like, oh shoot, what should I do with this lane? The best thing to practice is really always asking yourself when a wave gets to mid, what should I do with this lane? Like, ask yourself that question. What should I do with this lane? What should I do with
Yeah.
this lane? What should I do with this lane? And the worst thing that you could do is think one thing and then make a different choice. Commit to your choice, okay?
Yeah.
Because if you start pushing and then say, "Oh no, I'm not going to do that," that's the worst thing that could happen. Is not committing to your choice. So when I say that, I'm assuming that you kind of have a sense of what's going on because when you ask yourself that question, what should I do with this lane? You're thinking
Yeah.
about, okay, where's the other jungler? Where is my jungler? Should I get like is bot side roam a good gank? You know, things like that is stuff that you're evaluating in that moment.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so practice that for sure. Okay, you can press play again.
Okay.
So let's rewind for a quick moment before we go back here. So the fact that your kindred died. Can we toggle Fog of War off for this play? Yeah. Okay, go back. Wow, did he actually do a sneaky one? So when you place a ward in that pixel brush, so let's go up for a second. Scroll up, scroll up, scroll up. So if you place the ward in that pixel brush, you would have seen Wukong invade your jungle, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So that's why I highly encourage doing that and probably would have prevented the kindred from dying. So that's something that you can
Yeah.
give. That's information that you can give your jungler. Yeah.
Yeah.
So always ward the
It would
pixel
work too
brushes.
because
Hmm.
yeah, like we like almost cross paths. Like yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah,
Hmm.
it made more sense if I just worded the pixel.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Cool.
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 So
Cool.
let's
Cool.
press play. It's kind of a. So kindred dies. So in this instance, right, if you were to ask yourself, what should I do with this wave? What are you planning to do here? Like, what would you do with this wave right now?
I was well in this. I remember this in this
Hmm.
specific scenario. I like saw that she Kindred died, and I was like I saw that Wukong like
Hmm.
no, it was not Wukong. I saw this, and I was like, oh wow, he's like really close. Because at the time I was just really focused on like getting that CS. I
Right.
wasn't really paying attention to the map, so I reacted late. But I saw that I could probably catch him, so I started like
Gotcha.
chasing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Um. Usually, if your jungler is spam rage pinging at this moment, you need
Yeah.
to understand the situation, right? Because one thing that happened in this case is you don't actually know how healthy Wukong is, right?
Yeah.
There's a couple reasons I would actually say if your jungler has died this way and you haven't caught up and you haven't seen it, I would
Mm.
actually recommend not chasing. And there's two reasons why. One, it's a Wukong. So
Yeah.
Wukong's strong as hell, right? The second thing is he probably has double buffs now, right? So
Yep. Yep.
Wukong with red and blue is super dangerous. The other thing is you don't know how much HP he has right now. He's probably regenning a bunch of HP and you don't have vision on it. So
Yeah.
actually the best thing you could do is continue catching XP, right? Because the play is
Mhm.
a dead play. It's over. And you can't really do much. You can't revenge kill him.
Yeah.
It's probably best to get XP. So yeah, the most important
Okay.
thing in the early game is actually XP. Getting that XP, getting that CS, getting to your chapter is the best thing that you could do right now. So that's one thing I would recommend. Generally, as a roamer, I'd say Oriana's pretty weak up until that level 6 point. So
Yep. Yep.
I almost always don't recommend. If you're thinking about roaming, constantly evaluate like, do we win this 2v2? Do we win this 3v3? Is this going to
Mhm.
be a 3v3? Right? And then answering that question for yourself when you commit to a roam. Does that make sense? Cool.
You want me to continue?
Sure. Yeah, we can watch a little bit more. Do you have any specific questions maybe about this game or anything else that I can help like think about or answer here?
Yeah, this game was kind of like really bad for me. I just remember just dying a lot,
Yeah.
and uh, I don't know what I could have did differently to impact the game more. Because
Mm-hmm.
at that point I was just letting myself get carried. I was sitting back basically,
Gotcha.
just trying to farm.
Mm-hmm. So when you're dying a lot, what kind of happens? Like, are you stressing? Or are you like, oh shit? What are you thinking about when you're dying a lot?
Yeah, like I'm like falling farther and farther behind. Like
Mm-hmm.
basically, yeah, basically like what you said, just pretty much stressing.
Got
Um,
it.
just
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and there's some stuff that you can practice for that too. It's like so generally in League, dying is bad, right? Like let's start with that.
yeah,
Let's say dying is bad, right? But when you are dying a lot, you know that there are certain win conditions in a game, right?
yeah,
So, for example, in this game, you have a couple win conditions, right? Do you know what I mean by when I say that?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, what would you say the win conditions are for you in this game?
I think our team fight is a little bit better. We have more. I want to say like AOE like damage compared to them. More multi like champ focus like damage versus like I want to say they have like more single champ like uh I don't know how to explain it, but they don't have like a whole lot of damage that uh damages more than one champion. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Gotcha. So yeah, there's a couple. I guess what I was thinking about was so if we were to take win conditions into consideration, I think it's more like the consideration of okay, do I need to be the carry, or who on my team do I need to enable to be the carry, right? So that being said, what I mean by win conditions is the fact that like even if I'm not the primary damage source, in which case if you're behind, you probably are not the primary damage source. You need to protect, for example, your Kindred or your Yone. Those are your damage
Okay.
sources in this game, right? So as long
Yeah.
as you're doing that, you have two win conditions right there. Team
Okay.
fights, I honestly say it's kind of a toss up, right?
Yeah.
If we talk about odds of team fighting, it's almost always a 50-50, not knowing anything about the game state, right? So
Yeah.
so team fighting, everyone can rationalize team fighting in a different way. But your priority in this case is get to your items, protect your kindred and your Yone. That's a valid win condition. It doesn't matter at that point. I'm not saying die 15 times and be okay. Like, yeah, that's a stressful
Yeah.
situation. But you still have a
Right.
route to win this game. Look at that. Your team's doing freaking dragon. That's great. Your kindred
Yeah.
is 1-0, 39 CS, doing great. So just like thinking about those things when you're maybe borderline tilting, um, it's a good way to kind of deflect some of that stress, you know. Um,
Sure.
Obviously you
Sure.
want to think about how to die less, and one thing
Right.
to do and focus on building and setting yourself up to buy pink wards, and how do you wave clear safely at this point, right? That's kind of your main thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I So when you say like getting pink wards, should
Yeah.
I aim to get them like every time I recall or like?
Mm-hmm. So as a mid laner, you should always budget for a pink ward when you back. Always, whatever gold you need, add 75 to that. Get a pink ward.
Okay.
Because that pink ward is crucial information. Even if the enemy spends 4 autos to clear that pink ward, that is
Yeah.
valuable information for the game. Um,
Okay.
so every back, I recommend getting a pink ward. And the thing is, when you're behind, you have a couple options of where to put it, right? One is if you want to pause for a second, pink ward placement is always valuable. If your skirmish is weak, if you're behind, if their jungler is fed, a defensive pink ward is great because there's a couple options where you can put it. One, if you move your camera down a little bit, so if you can't get to that pixel brush where there's a ward right now, that is a great spot for a pink ward that's defensive that you can
This one right
defend.
here.
Sorry, so the pixel brush would be the optimal choice, right? But
Yeah.
that is the best brush to put if you can maintain an equal lane state, right? Right now, you're
Mhm.
kind of on the defensive end. You can't really maintain that lane state very well. So you should put one where that ward is right now. That's the first option,
Okay.
right? Yeah, defensive. That's defensive pink warding. That's a great spot. If you go to the top side, right above red, that brush right there at the edge of that brush.
This
Sorry,
one or
down,
this
down, down.
one?
Yeah, this one right here between red and Rift Herald
Oh,
towards the edge. That is also a great spot defensively because it watches for your Wukong flanks. It protects you from the flanks, right?
yeah.
So
Okay.
defensive pink warding always a great tool.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Cool.
Nice.
Okay, so we talked about a lot. I'm gonna pause there. Do you have any last minute questions that I can help with, or does everything I
Um.
said like make sense? Was that helpful?
Yeah. I think this is enough for me just to like focus on right now.
Yeah,
To like just try and work on
totally.
specifically like the first like 5 minutes of the game. Um.
Sure.
I'm like trying to implement it like in my next couple games.
Yeah, man. I mean, honestly, the first 7 to 10 minutes of a game is so important. You know, there's a lot that can happen. So,
Right.
sounds good.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah. But other than that, I don't have any other questions at all. So.
Awesome.